welcome to another video. This time I thought I would talk about something that I think is I don't know how to describe it. There's tragedy, but it's it's a bittersweet sort of thing. I don't know how to describe this, but the story about Hadrian and his lover. Of course, many people say, oh, he's homosexual lover, blah, blah, blah. They put labels on it, blah, blah, because that's what they know, and that's understandable. So let's just call it what it is. I would say it was meant to be, and not just because it's coming from, bias, because, it's like, for me, it's like, oh, okay, it's a beautiful thing, but very, very human and very tragic, but at the same time showing how something so simple, it feels like it was simple, at least the story that's been told. We don't know exactly what happened. Of course, we weren't there, but you can interpret the way you want to, but you can also interpret it in a way that is more like it's what it is. And it's it's a beautiful interaction between the two. It's a beautiful story. And regardless of it being a story, it's one of those things that feels, you could say, faded, but at the same time chosen. Remember, I made a video about there's no such thing as destiny, there's no such thing as free will. That's because they're all connected. It's connected. It's bound to happen. Things are bound to happen. We're being guided, but at the same time we make choices. So he made a choice, obviously, to go for it, to do something about it, or at least kind of allow himself to be in that. So otherwise he wouldn't have done what he did. He wouldn't have honored Antinous, and he wouldn't have created all these. He created a cult, apparently, right? So, and we call it a cult, but to him, pretty sure it wasn't that. He was speaking from the heart, and he was lost, and he kind of made it. So I think he tried to make something out of it. Let's just call it that way. He made something out of it. So I wanted to look into this, and I saw actually online, did a bit of research, and so let's go into the chart of Hadrian first. Well, we're not going to go into Antinous' chart because it's like, I feel a little weird about it, to be honest, because he is deified now, and he's part of the star charts. If you look up Antinous, he's one of the asteroids, I suppose, but he's a deified. Yeah, he's deified, so he's part of that. Either way, it's kind of special, especially for, I don't know if you associate with this, but other queer people who associate with this, or or astrologers as well, or practicing astrologers, whatever. And whether you use Antinous in your chart or not, I kind of have, but we're not in here for that. I did put it in his chart. I put just to kind of see where it's going. So we're going to go into his first chart, which is, you can probably see here. I'll zoom out. So his name was Publius alias Hadrianus, born January 24 of the year 76 AD. I put in, you see that there, Julian. When you're on astro.com, you have to put Jule after the date. Anytime before the date of 1580 something, before the Gregorian calendar was introduced. Apparently he was born 6 a.m. I'm not sure, but I don't know who did the research. I just kind of followed it, and we're going to go with that. I'm not really sure, because we don't know the exact time, fortunately, unless we do like some sort of like strong, I don't know if it's even possible. It feels kind of more like a personal thing. Hopefully not in vain. If someone were to say, combine Akashic with QHHT kind of thing. I don't know, with astrology and numerology as well, with other also disciplines, but I'm not sure. I mean, it's nice to know that it's like, not have to be, doesn't have to be that specific, but I'm sure that the essence of Hadrian, or the part of the consciousness, is somewhere else out here today. We don't know who it is. I don't know who it is. Be curious to know who that might be, though, if someone were to go through that and see if has this, not Hadrian himself, of course, it's the essence, right? So what soul he's in. You never know, it could be one of you, I don't know. So if you have a bit of that, I don't know, we never know. But I think somehow that there's a possibility for that. I believe that. So anyway, so here's Hadrian's chart according to what I researched on. I did both natal and progression chart and transit, and I did transit for today because I wanted to see where it is from today's perspective. So 24th, 2024. He was apparently born in what is today Italica in Spain. At that time it was Roman territory. It was part of the Roman Empire. So you can see here that he had very strong sun and moon conjunction. Right away I see that right here. And it's part of his first house, so that means he definitely embodied both planets. 26, 25. Yeah, actually, it's a stellium. It's a very emotionally open. Very. The sun is in Aquarius. It's very. What do you call this? I have some of this kind of stuff when you have a conjunction and between two planets or more, maybe, and one is in one sign and the other one is the other sign. For me, my experience with this is the one in the critical degrees of the previous sign going to the cusp of the other sign feels like for here, for example, we have Jupiter conjunct Cancer, which was in Capricorn. So there's that feeling of expansiveness, really emotionally open, able to understand people, especially that's how he probably was very positive birth, at least his good relationship with his mother. A lot of that growth when it comes to sensing things in what's around him. He's kind of aware of his emotions, specifically physically through Capricorn, because it is very earthy sign. It's specifically probably, I don't know, maybe something to do with why he traveled a lot. Probably he had good he was very with his is that Saturn or is that Capricorn? I don't remember. Something that rules the knee. I think that's Saturn. Knees, skin, and teeth. Okay, but if it's Capricorn rules. So knees, skin, and skeleton. So it's probably why he was. I don't know. Maybe he walked a lot. I'm not really sure. But that kind of added to his sun, which was, if we looked at the sun rules the back, I believe the heart right here. Where does it say here? Yeah, the heart, pericardium, the back spine, so life force. Okay. But it was in Aquarius. So, I don't know, I'm not really into medical astrology, but this is part of medical astrology, the body. shins, ankles, circulatory system, pineal gland. Okay, that makes sense. Why he traveled a lot. He liked to kind of venture into new things. This is why if you look at his travels, there's actually a website that I saw here on worldhistory.org. The author was Simeon Nechev, and he had this map of where he was, where he went through. He traveled quite a lot, at least in that area, in the Mediterranean area, up to north, he went all the way to Britannia, of course, because of Hadrian's Wall. I believe that's in the UK. And he went all the way to Turkey, went to Egypt, parts of Syria, today's Syria, parts of Israel. Back then it was called Arabia. Judea was there. He was pretty much everywhere. Busy. But I'm going to tell you in a little bit after this why I did choose this map, or why I look for it when I did my research, is because of Antinous, when he met him. Right, so anyway, so going back to his, like, personality, like, at the very least he identified, I want to say identifies, because the essence is still there. I don't believe it's separate. He identifies, or at least at that time in his form, he identified with being very, very generous. I'm going to go really, really deep into this, very specific. So as we know, Jupiter is about expansion. Jupiter is so much notes here that I kind of get lost. And let's go all the way to Jupiter here. This is what happens when you take a lot of notes. Okay, so it's about expansion, faith, ritual, hope, knowledge, access, abundance, inflation, creative visualization, largesse, generosity, wastage, cornucopia, opulence, conscience, joviality, cheerfulness. So the point is, it's all about that optimism with the function of the moon and the sun, which is vitality. Sun is vitality. Sun is, what makes you alive. It's what makes you go, I like this one. But the moon is like, you get the feel of that and really sense and magnetism. So he's quite magnetic when it comes to his personality. People probably got drawn to him quite often, or at least that's how you could say package himself, but it's not really ascendant thing, but at least he kind of, physically he was quite, you could say, robust. You could if you look at his pictures, the way he looked, he looks very robust. He's quite handsome, like very handsome. So good looking, and so he has that appearance about him. His health was quite, probably, at least in this regard, is quite good. And at least in this regard, in the earlier parts of his life, later parts of his life, parts of his body, he probably had a bit of, I guess you can say that this quar thing with Ixion there, also conjunct Pluto, shows that there's probably like a later part, because it was near, it's at the top of the, what do you call this? One second here. Okay, so we're talking about degree theory. So the last degrees of a cardinal sign is 26 degrees. So we have a bit of the, Jupiter is the one that's heightened here. Jupiter is the one that is focused on, like, it's had a lot of strong Capricorn energy. Very much focused on very abundant, sort of, you could say, like his, not only his body, because we are talking about the first house here, so usually it's your overall health, your overall body, but it's also like when it comes to things you do for the first time. What do you call those? First time thingies, whatever. The point is, like, when you venture out and you have a new project, anything new, right? That's the first house as well. So he's very, very adventurous. You can say that he's very out there. He's very optimistic about those things. And there's more to it, of course, behind all that. I don't want to go too much into detail because, you know, if you go into it, it's part of the process of being in astrology. You know, you study it, and you basically learn the vocabulary as you go along. Kind of like you kind of understand it a little bit more. And Jupiter is really that expansive energy, right? So with Jupiter and again conjunct to the moon, again he's quite giving. I would say he's highly generous as a person, specifically when it comes to, you know, especially when he's doing things for the first time. He's adventurous, he's curious, he's actually like going out there and he's taking initiative. It is ruled Sun, Aries rules this house. It's but also but with Capricorn ruling this one, Saturn rules this house. And we were to look at Saturn right now in this chart. Saturn was hidden. So Saturn was hidden in his dreams. So in his house of 12, in his 12th house, the house of hidden enemies, house of isolation, house of secrets, house of things that kind of we put aside, house of things that when we require isolation and reflection. Crime is also probably here. But with Saturn there, I would say something to do with because Saturn was in the last degrees of Sagittarius. An immutable sign, 17 degrees is actually heightened one. But Saturn it's already past that. But it's still kind of, you can say, yeah, he's still critical degrees. So that means that Saturn there was quite strong, and there's a lot of limitations and hidden fears behind it all. So the way he had when it comes to his generosity or his magnanimosity, you can say, was that he probably had a little bit of fear behind that and kind of restricted himself just a little bit, especially when he was younger. So we don't know exactly what happened. But tying that into, then going into this other stellium right here, this core Ixion Pluto here, it is in this conjunction, all three planets. And core open. Core here was, I'm going to use Philip Sedgwick's stuff here, but core is our ability to be creative beyond creative. It's the high vibration of Jupiter, or at least according to Astro.com, it is. Kowawar, just a long name. Okay, so creativity plus spirituality, reproductive, probably intuition, psychic abilities, higher consciousness, personal transformation and healing, environmentalism and social activism, orderliness, ordinance with universal reclamation of sacredness of life, procreation, challenges, scrutiny. So basically, blah 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 blah. It goes into creativity. Really, it's the urge to break from free and renew, to have your eyes open, where we allow cosmic divine energy and creativity to lead. Combine that with, I like combining things. I don't know if you already noticed this one. But Koar, according to Philip Sedgwick, was it was a Native American deity of creation, right? So it's creativeness, inspiring, possibility-oriented, uplift, sagging emotions, strong sense of self. So again, but with Ixion there, Ixion is supposed to be about violations, or, you know, because Ixion is supposed to be where we follow our bliss, right? So it's also being able to work hard at things, affinity for research, engineering, technical and creative abilities. But it's sort of also be curious about the little things that doesn't need to be sought, and then make mistakes with those, because it has, oh no, that's Pholus, sorry. Sorry, it's a Jekyll-Hyde split apparently, or the opposite, or it's not. Basically, it's figuring out your deepest part of yourself when it comes to your carnal. It's kind of like the shadow. It's kind of like Lilith, but it's trying to be curious and going beyond what you're given and trying to figure out, what is this? Why are you doing this? It kind of, it's a lot to do also with karma and second chances. So when we make choices, or is it second chance? That's fullness. So, but karma. So choices that we make, that when we try to like don't care about the gifts that we have and we kind of just go with impulse, that is very much ixion. So a lot of it is also self-judgment and learning to forgive yourself. So it's really trying to find your true happiness by figuring out what is it that, here's the gift, here's the one that I have, here's one, but how do I do that and still discover things on my own? Right? This is why it's called violation, is because violation also, it rules violation because it means that you're kind of disobeying natural law, or you're disobeying what's already there, what's given to you. So you kind of like saying, fuck you, I don't care about it. But at the same time, because it's not really fuck you, it's more like, well, I want to do my thing. It's very, very carnal. It's very animalistic, very impulsive, compulsive energy. But it's really figuring out what is, because of such strong gifts of Ixion, to be artistic and to be technological. It's like, it's almost like you know what to do, but you want to go beyond that and kind of figuring yourself. It's kind of, it's ethics related. It's something to do with ethics. Like you have this rule of law, you have this authority that has given you so many things, but then Ixion goes beyond that. So I'm still trying to again understand Ixion. It's kind of definitely has a lot to do with impulse. That was my research on that. But if we go into Philip Sedgwick's stuff, is understanding, or it's an understanding of the karmic wheel, gives and uses of okay, it is second chance and being discerning, but being discerning with like your bliss, your sort of like what makes you happy, but at the same time without injuring anyone or hurting anyone, or especially with the God-given gifts that you have, or whatever you want to call it, the blessings of the universe. So that's Ixion with Kolar, that creativity, and with Pluto, and trying to figure out really, really what it meant to be real with that. He kind of had questions about it, and because it was all in Aquarius, we look at also Saturn and we look at Uranus. At that time, of course, that didn't apply, but we're not here for that. We're right here. Okay, so Uranus was already in Aquarius, so we don't have to go anywhere else. You can say that he's quite innovative and very inventive, very creative, but at the cost of so many other things, like his relationships with specifically responsibilities toward relationships. So things that he needed to fix, because he's, in retrograde, Varuna in retrograde is, according to Philip Hedgewick's stuff, now I kind of understand Varuna a little bit more. It's a high vibration of Saturn, which is like, it's not limitations, it's trying to finish what you started, and understanding universal law by taking things one step at a time. It's kind of, it's basically developing competence, being sovereign, but regulating things without force. So it is less of a control that Saturn has, but more about regulation and mastery of all tasks accepted. So when it comes to the 7th house and in Leo, it's being able to, just the sovereign thing applies here because it's Leo. He wants to shine. He wants to be in good relationships with other people, or at least how he deals with contracts, or at least agreements with other people. Kind of was in retrograde, and he kind of didn't know how to probably accomplish that. So he kind of worked twice as hard to build relationships, but he didn't know how to do that without being real with himself, because of his highly creative and very ingenious side to himself. But the reality behind it is like really being real with that. So while the conjunction here, that opposition is to the sun. Oh, okay. So no, okay. So his relationship with people, its contracts he made, any open enemies that he probably had made, was kind of pulled apart when he wanted to just shine and be his own magnanimous, sort of like generous self. And some people probably questioned that, or rather, he didn't know how to complete those relationships. He didn't know how to be kind of in proper relationship with contracts and people and even marriages, right? His own marriages. Yeah. So, and because of the opposition of Leo there and Aquarius, the sun rules here Leo, obviously. So the sun rules, well, the sun rules his 8th house, but it does rule his Varuna. So that means that and because it was in Capricorn, he had to have responsibility. He felt like he probably had to maintain good relationship with people, but he kind of had that doubt at the same time, because it's like in that opposition, but you also have the Capricorn, which sort of like, it feels like he had to limit himself in terms of how much he would open himself up to people. And at the same time, how do you shine without, how do you not compromise your childlikeness, your sun, your solar self, your energy and all that stuff, without, how do you do that without compromising all that? How do you relate with others? How do you so I would say he had a lot of that going on, especially as he got older, when he's probably in his teens, or when he was already probably past 30 years old, or between 20 and 30 years old, because that's usually, marriage is 7th house, and that's usually when it is. When you get married, or at least have agreements with yourself as well. I wanted to go back into how that ties into his ascendant. So it comes from a family, obviously, of people that were very probably emotionally open, because this is Cancer right here, right? Emotionally open, probably a lot of probably emotional ups and downs as well, a lot of emotions, maybe a lot of motherly control sort of type of environment. And because of that, he always had to portray himself as this sort of really stern, I'm serious, I'm not unstable, this is the way he wanted to portray himself to the public, especially as a Roman emperor. Later, absolutely. So I'm not looking into the progression. This progression chart also, this is partially a progression chart, progression, natal, and transit. The progression is for today, not when he progressed later on. I didn't do a chart for that because I thought, well, obviously he's going to progress anyways. But I want to be more curious about if he were alive today, which is obviously that's, what is that? Over close to 2,000 years old. That's crazy. Right? So, but crazy in a good way. I think so. Anyways. So Saturn was that. Okay, Saturn, we already talked about the Saturn there. We already talked about Sun ruling Varuna. Okay, so we still have we're going to go back into Quar, Ixion, Pluto there. But with the stellium here, okay, we have a square to let's look at his sun first. Okay. What's this one? Where is this pointing? Let's just go to 2 degrees. Okay. Well, no, it's So, okay, so again, he had challenges when it came to, had to be constantly kind of like standing his ground and be confident and sort of very sure of himself when it came to the public, because the public eye probably saw him as this like really, aggressive, probably like unpredictable, or at least hard to read individual, because his midheaven was in Scorpio. So there was a sort of a power struggle probably there. I wouldn't say necessarily a power struggle, that's more of a Pluto thing, but he probably felt that. Sorry, this is I'm charging here on the side. So he probably experienced that, and he probably didn't know. Well, he knew what he was doing, but people weren't sure of him. They probably thought he was like, yes, he was magnanimous, that's what he wanted to portray, but the way people saw him was like, oh, you're in it for control, right? And that's Scorpio. And I don't know, he's probably hard to read. And with Pluto being one of the rulers, but also Mars of Scorpio, we look into Pluto, the effects of Pluto there. It is trying to that, so he knew how to work with the being genuine in front of the public, despite the fact that they probably saw him as that. They probably saw him like this Plutonian sort of individual, sort of like, oh, he doesn't know, he's probably in control, like, oh my goodness, I don't know what to do with him. So he's definitely like he has a very strong presence when it came to the public. I'm going to zoom out here. Whether you can see the chart is inconsequential because I'm doing the best I can here. So just bear with me here. Okay, so it is squared. It is trying to, his midheaven is trying to Pluto, but okay, so because Pluto rules that, let's look at Mars. Where's Mars? Okay, so Mars was in Pisces, right here, 19 degrees. But Mars was conjunct Venus. So that's kind of individual. It's very, he knew how to work his way around charming and convincing others. He's very sort of like a very go-getter kind of person, but at the same time a charm about him. He knew how to seduce people, so to speak, specifically when it comes to second house issues. So second house things like money as freedom, earning money that he earned, not necessarily from his boss, that would be 11th house, or any sort of authority figure, but the way he actually earned money. So the way he saw his own self-worth in when it comes to possessions, that is the second house. So with Venus there, Venus-Mars conjunction is that whole, he knew how to work with this energy of like, I know how to seduce you, basically. And a very sort of like charismatic as well, in a charismatic way because of Pisces. So he knew how to work with his own sort of sense of spirituality. He had this sort of pull, he had this sort of magnetism, you can say magnetism, but like pull, sort of like this sort of magic, and people saw him, both things he was drawn to and the things that he also attracted. That's both Venus and Mars together. So with Mars in Pisces, that kind of tied into how people also saw him. He's kind of like this, just kind of mysterious guy, and the way he's like, wow, he's like, I'm just looking at his photo, just looking at his image, I mean, just a statue, I can see why there was like that sort of image. Like he was very, very, very pull. The pull was very powerful. It's hot. He's hot. Like hot. Okay, like in a very sort of enigmatic, ethereal, very powerful, sort of like a bad boy, but at the same time like nice bad boy at the same time. I don't know how to describe it, but it's like that energy. Right? So people definitely saw him that way. It doesn't say that Haumea here is conjunct to his, I would say it is. So he's very creative about his creativeness is Haumea here. Hurry up. A little slow when it comes to this. So Maya is, the way I see it here, is urge to find true meaning, because it's like your ability to regenerate, being creatively regenerate. It's like a really like a natural sense of self, like of, you know, how Maya is like your natural gifts of regeneration, generation, degeneration probably as well, and but also very nurturing. How Maya is the higher vibration of uh, uh, not Ceres, that's Sedna, of Neptune. It's a very powerful, creative, sort of like natural ability to hone your own natural. He probably wasn't really aware of it at that time, but yeah. We're gonna go back into this one because this is ruled. This one, right? This one. Actually, no, we're already right here. You know, let's go with that. On one separate note, he was quite. We could say he's very. He just didn't. He knew what to do with his own natural gifts. Probably also why it ties in with his gifts of persuasion, because you have how Maya trine Venus right here. His gifts of persuasion, his gifts of allure, his gifts of beauty, his gifts of, so he knew how to take care of himself, specifically with his money pertaining towards his career, or his life, his career, authority figures, the public. But that's not so much about his midheaven stuff, more like what he would do with money. He knew how to handle it. He knew how to, in a way, he knew how to handle it, but he was also very quite generous about it. But he also knew how to reserve money to whom he could, you know, who he trusted as well. There's a lot of trust and energy with needed for Haumea to be in Scorpio. So he needs to be able to trust others. You need to be like really like, you know, people. He was probably careful about it, but at the same time, extravagant. Not exact. No. He wasn't extravagant. He was kind of. He had this sort of. He had a very strong psychic ability towards sensing specifically what he saw in others. If we looked at Venus and what it ruled physically, but that doesn't. It kind of can tie into the second house. Okay, so how he communicated, so something around the kidney area, so throat, Haumea, what does Haumea rule? If it's fertility and it's a kind of, it's probably close to the genital area as well, so Haumea probably is around that area, but it's not a main planet, so I don't know if that's really part of that. But it is something to do with fertility or the ability to create or procreate, even if it's, you know, by yourself, that creative energy. Soulful confidence. Okay, so there you go. Unshakable personal inner knowing. Creative, regenerative, able to reconstruct, redefine, transform, especially regarding consciousness, willfulness, and restoring rock solid integrity. Supportive, fostering, fertile, creative. Higher vibration of Neptune. Which is funny because Neptune is a co-ruler to Pisces, where Venus was in his chart. So he definitely knew how to work with that energy of being like not only alluring, seductive, and kind of like persuasive, but also how to work with money specifically, how to earn that. Specifically because he knew how to work with the public. He knew how to work with, I'd say at that time, there was already, obviously, because it's already AD, there was the, what do you call that? Not the council. You know what I'm talking about. If you're a Roman historian, you know what I'm talking about. Or if you're Roman, you know what I'm talking about. So, the council, whatever it's called, the Senate. There you go. So, with Scorpio there, and Pisces. So Pisces rules the lower part of the body, like the foot actually. But Scorpio rules the genital area. Yeah, genitals, reproductive organs, but it's very similar to Pluto, kind of, but not really. So, okay. How does that tie into this whole thing? Like, okay. Oh man. Yeah, I guess you can say he's kind of very, not only alluring, but he's like a sexual energy. Like he knew confidently what his sexuality was. Like this is why he didn't really care if people knew about Antinous. And it's like, whatever. You know, he has this sort of inner knowing that's like, okay, soulful confidence, right? And then you have also Venus there, so it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I know how to work with this energy. Of course, because this is a trine, we don't know exactly what kind of. It can be quite. It can be quite a, you could say, lazy aspect, meaning like it's so comfortable he knew to work with it, but when it came to other things that came through and just like that kind of challenged his confidence, possibly, and that you know maybe someone else that's more confident or someone that he needed to kind of humble himself towards, then possibly. With the water signs there, it's like also very, very seductive. It's very enjoying that energy of like a lot of emotional connections with people. He knew how to like work with that. He knew how to, especially because Venus is in exaltation. It's in its rise with Pisces, so it's right there. He knew how to work with that. He knew how to. It added energy to the Venus sort of energy. It kind of made it sort of like, okay, I know how to be charismatic. So, but something to do with the feet. So that means that he kind of, if it's something to do with the, is it lumbar system? I don't know, the feet area. So, I don't know how that works. I don't know how that ties in. That doesn't really tie in because it's not really about the body. So let's skip that one. But definitely sexuality, where there like strong sexuality. Sexuality and sensuality. We're not even adding here. Not comes to mind. I was just thinking, I should have added fixed stars here because I was kind of curious. What about other essences, past lives? I'm pretty sure he had some of those. Even like 2,000 years ago. Oh yeah. What else is there? Okay, so we got into the 10th house. Now we're going to go back into core. Ixion, this placement right here. Actually, wait, no, let's go back to, this stellium. We're going to go back to this stellium right here. So it is also square Neptune. Funny. Because Neptune rules Pisces. Core rules Pisces. Because we're focusing on mostly, right now we're focusing on this area. So with its square Neptune right here. Okay. Does it even square Nadir? Nadir is 3 degrees. Yeah, I would still include Nadir here because for me personally, because yeah. But Neptune here, if we looked at Neptune by itself, it's very much like the ability to work with that magical energy of illusions, delusions. That's whole like the veil, a veil of like, okay, but it's more of a personal thing, but also with communication because it's in the 3rd house. But it's influencing his 4th house more than his 3rd house. Especially because it's in an angle, so it's an angular house. 4th house is an angular house, so it's an angle right here. So it's in a deer. He probably had to kind of, in a way, martyr himself a little bit when it came to his family, like his role, is we talked about this before in previous posts like months ago. Where when it comes to the angular houses or the angles themselves, they're kind of tied. They're tied to those houses that they're in, the angular houses. However, they're kind of more like the front, the face of that house. So it's not just his family itself, but his role. So with Neptune there, his role was kind of just to be a little bit more passive, at least when he was young, passive, sort of a pacifist. Very much just gave into the illusions of what family values were. So he kind of didn't know how to be kind of that generous individual. He had a hard time trying to fit into the family, because he was trying to see that, oh, okay, I this family is very, you know, this way. They're very much kind of relaxed. It is ruled by Taurus. Here's the other thing. It's an intercepted house. Right? You see this right here? It's an intercepted house. That means it's an intercepted sign. Taurus is an intercepted sign. So here, growing up, his role might have been that he didn't know how to really be with the family, because he was kind of like, there was a lot of distance. There was a lot of uncertain things that's going on. He didn't know what was going on. He just had to believe that this is what they wanted. This is what is good for him, you know. And being being technically in Taurus, ruled by Taurus here, and because it's intercepted, rules also, I believe that's something to do with being ruled also by Gemini. So communication and things that were kind of just like closed in, he didn't know what to make of that. Even his make there, which is like ability to manifest higher thinking, quick-wittedness. It's like very creative sort of thinking. It's like higher up there. It's higher vibration of Uranus. So his family himself, the family itself was very, probably he was in retrograde, so he didn't know probably how to communicate exactly what. He had a lot of like thoughts that came through, a lot of ideas, a lot of like innovative things that he wanted to probably express in words, and like but he didn't know how to do that. He didn't know how to articulate himself, really communicate, and really be self-assured when it comes to his communication. He didn't know how to be clever. He probably doubted himself quite a lot when he was younger, and the family environment didn't really help with that. There was a lot of illusions, and kind of mystery behind his family environment, because his role was to be just kind of this pacifist. And the fact that it is intercepted, so that means it was an area of his life that he didn't know how to express himself. However, because it was the cusp was in Taurus, we look into Venus, he was able to kind of express more of that, his own, I guess you can say, his worth was coming out through the second house. So the way he made money, the way he earned it, the way he was able to persuade and seduce and be alluring to others. So it came probably a little later when he went full circle, probably as he got older. You know, of course not when he was younger, but when he was much older. I'm going to end that part right there because I wanted to get into this conjunction right here. So again, he didn't know how to be expressive. He didn't know how to express himself, his individuality, when it comes to being serious, being committed to his goals, being, you know, his ambitions. Really, Jupiter inside in Capricorn is very ambitious placement. Conjunct that with Sun and Moon, it's like right there. It's like, I know what to do. I know how to be ambitious, but he didn't know how to do that when it came to his family or the environment he was in. We also have here, because of this square here, so his right here, because of that environment he had, he also didn't know how to express himself specifically to the public. At first, when he was younger, probably later he did know how to, but at first when he was young, he just didn't know how to do that. That T-square is showing that his locked in sort of ideals for himself to be ambitious, to do what he wants, and you kind of just work at it, and little things, doing things hands-on and work hard at it, had to be kind of, it was quite unseen. It was like, didn't know how to work with that. At the same time though, because we have the fourth house, or rather his fourth house is his Taurus, is an intercepted house, intercepted sign. Same thing with this one as well. This was also intercepted. So how this was released later on in life, when he came around to realizing his own personal truth, his own overall appearance and health. So he probably definitely had experience with, let's go back to core here. Kawawa. So again, creativity or inspiration, being inspiring, possibility oriented. So high vibration of Jupiter, conjunct that with Ixion. So second chances, really finding the truth in what he really wanted as he got older was something he had to kind of learn himself and learn on his own by venturing out, doing things. It is the first house issue. So when it came to finally being able to express himself, because right here we have Scorpio, right? But it's intercepted. So, but Scorpio ruled his 10th house, even his 10th house generally. So, but because of that, we look into Pluto, and it was through his loneliness, probably when he was a child, at least growing up. Also, he's probably had this loneliness about him, that he's just really lonely. Like, even though he knew how to work with the energy of being seductive and all that stuff, but because of that, he was very introspective and introverted. You can see right there right away. I mean, he's already introverted by the fact that it's in Capricorn. His ascendant is in Capricorn. But the fact that he had this intercepted house in the 10th house, meaning like the public saw him mysteriously, again, that ties in with this interception. And it feels like he was definitely like alone in his own personal growth and realization of what he really truly wanted, what it meant for him to be this kind of inspiring, very giving sort of individual, creative and uplifting. That's core. And Ixion kind of brings that out, and it's like, what do you really want? What do you have to defy in order for you? What kind of laws you have to break? What kind of suffering? What kind of in order for you to really attain that joy, right? So he had to constantly question that, specifically with this was it okay, so Pholus and Eris right here. Okay, that's with Uranus right there. I'm gonna do a straight line. Okay, so Uranus, Pholus, okay, because that's 19 degrees Eris. Oh, it's perfect conjunction. Okay, Eris. Oh, Eris. Eris and Pluto were in perfect square to each other. And therefore, Ixion with Eris as well. So, with this also, this means that he had to make certain decisions, particularly when it came to the everyone else in the world or in the public, or how he basically was not only seen, but how he was his relationship with the public, authority figures and all those things. There was this square told him to kind of be quiet and just be quietly observant. So his ability to be included in the public was quite buried. He didn't probably he didn't know how to relate with them, even though he knew how to persuade them. He knew how to, not that he didn't know how to relate with them, it's more like he's quietly, because he was very highly introverted, he didn't know how to, it didn't feel like this sort of, for others, it might have felt like, who's this guy? What does he want? I don't know what he is. Like, he's hard to read, right? And so he made certain decisions. He made sure a lot of things probably he was tested a lot, or he tested himself and see. Pholus is right here, decision making, slightly kind of like Ixion, which is discerning. But Pholus is really being awakened to one's specific choices that we make, right? And being decisive about it. At least for me, that's the way I see it. So regardless of the outcome, Pholus teaches us to make decisions. And it is about making choices that might seem insignificant, but at the same time have, it could be, the outcomes might be dangerous, or the outcome. So we don't know. But this is probably what he probably created. I wouldn't say necessarily public enemies, but probably... right? I don't see one here, but he did. He did kind of make enemies, public, like actual open enemies, because of the way people saw him, right? He's probably seen as like power hungry, or probably people perceived him and they judged him for being tyrannical or something like that. Because of the Scorpio there, so you probably saw him as like this sort of, they don't know what he wanted, so he's just kind of manipulative about it, or at least that's the way they saw it. But I'm sure he wasn't intentionally doing that, so he didn't know how to be confident towards that. So it was kind of awkward most of the time. So he made enemies that way as well. Didn't know how to work with contracts and agreements, but eventually, we all learn, anyways. Also tie that into Varuna right here. He was also probably confused with the way he saw what people wanted, but didn't understand what they wanted. And was like, why are you judging me for just being myself? Right? You have, you actually have a grand fixed square right here. Can you see that? Grand fixed square right here. This was one of his biggest challenges, to be completely himself, to be completely creative with the abilities he had, to be very, he got challenged between being self-confident but also passive at the same time, but it's also giving but at the same time taking. He didn't know how to work with that. Or at least he was continuously challenged. He was continuously like awakened because of that. I would say he was probably he knew what he was doing. And probably people just didn't see that. So they projected onto him. He was like, it's like, oh, you're just la la la, you're a tyrant, or you probably didn't know what you want, or you're probably manipulative and all those things. So, but at the same time, not like crazy manipulative controlling. This Ixion thing here, it's probably a lot to do with something probably happened when he was born. I don't know, maybe he was, his life was in danger possibly, or his mother had to bear him alone. I'm not really sure. It's not saying there's a mother thing here, but definitely something to do with the birth part. I think that's when the planet is conjunct the ascendant. Okay, yeah, so life-threatening stuff, because Pluto's there. But with the other planets too, you have Jupiter there, which is highlighted, and that's more of the ascendant thing, but still, more of the positive part. So there might have been potential for life-threateningness, especially with maybe the public kind of being excluded, himself, but also his mother. I'm not sure. Or his parents, his family is there, the father is there as well, the son is right there, and the mother figure is right there as well. So one side is that he probably saw his birth as like this sort of like, probably there was a lot of judgment going on. The public didn't see it that way, or people around him, or maybe extended families didn't really see it that way. But later in life too, then he was, or rather, so it's kind of ties into both his own person, like his birth, and at the same time his own identity about himself. I'm not going to go further into that because I feel like there's more to say. Uranus is also okay, it's in perfect square to Pholus. So his ideas being like, crazy how to make money, for example, and self-worth, and ideals of just money, any sort of possession. He's probably very innovative about it and was how to work with that. But we also have the fact that Pluto here is actually closer to the conjunct, to the cusp of the second house. So Pluto has less to do with the birth than anything. So now I realize that. And this conjunction right here, actually, Ixion, let's take a look. Oops. Let's go back there. Can you see that? Okay. I don't know if you can see it. I'm going to move it to the center here. Okay. So anyways, and this is what happens when something is, it saves it automatically, and I didn't save anything. Like, I didn't do anything. So, but anyways, I'm just going to leave that there. This happens a lot. I don't know why it does that. It's like, anyways, so we have here this placement of Uranus. That's highly distracting. Oh, avoid the square. Ignore the square. So Pluto there is also knowing how to earn money on your own. I believe that he had to earn money on his own, and he probably felt some kind of like he had to make decisions when it came to that, and made a lot of mistakes when it came to exploring how to make money when he was younger, even when he was older. How to be, even his self-worth, how to be more expressive about his self-worth. He probably came off very strong and intense and intimidating. So a lot of things that happened were just kind of like, ugh, we don't know what happened, but that's probably what I would guess. But he knew how to be creative about it. Quar still kind of, in a very distant way, affects Uranus here. His creativeness, his ability to be self-assured about his creativity. But it's affecting Ixion more here. But the fact that Pluto is the one that's conjuncting Uranus here, it's in the cusp of the second house. That's what I'm saying. So Pluto he's showing that he had to earn money on his own, hard to prove himself, he proved his self-worth on his own. He felt quite alone when it comes to those things. What else? I hope I'm not missing anything else. Okay, we have Ceres there. So we have Ceres there. Square Moon and Jupiter. So did it probably when he was already like in his 20s or maybe or earlier late teens, he's probably had any sort of higher education he was experiencing, any sort of like education he was going through academically at that time, especially at that time that was Rome. There was a lot of challenges, like you have Ceres here in Libra, so it's a lot of like fairness, a lot to do with being fair, a lot to do with being nurturing towards this expression of unconditional love through being connected in a relationship, being communicated, but also being fair and just. But it didn't work with his ideals of being generous and kind of like very very ambitious. So probably his teachers or his professors or whoever it was, his tutors at that time, didn't really see him like were you too ambitious and you should kind of hold yourself a little bit, kind of, you don't see it this way, you're kind of very strict about what you have, like it's kind of one way or it's my way, or it's like, what is that one? It's my way or the highway, right? So so I don't know, it's that's what I'm seeing here. What else is there? I usually like to go with the red lines, meaning like the hard aspects first. With that being, with Ceres there in this 9th house at higher education, it also means like he's probably seen as people didn't know how to express unconditional love to him, or it was kind of very challenging, or he didn't know how to express his unconditional love to or acceptance of people around him, like foreigners as well. because he was kind of ambitious. Again, he was seen that way. So it's a lot to do with ninth house as well. But we have here Eris rules that. So Eris was hidden in intercepted house right here, because to me Eris also rules Libra. So that gave a bit of that strong sort of like, yeah, my way or the highway. So very powerful sort of intense energy of Scorpio there influencing Ceres. Wondering, okay, I don't know. But at the same time, it's also influenced by Pisces because of Venus right here. Namely by Venus, because it's a little bit more stronger. It's more of a personal thing. So his own personal treatment to probably foreigners was kind of very open, probably like but at the same time, he didn't know who to trust. So he kind of kept his guard up. Scorpio is a fixed sign, whilst Pisces is a mutable sign. So even though he did kind of give, he was very giving, he was very generous and open, he also felt like he needed to be aloof at times, many times actually. Besides the whole being like, okay, here we go, we kind of like, I'm open to your suggestions, I'm open to what you think, whether we're talking about foreigners or professors or tutors or whatever. The series, his ability to give unconditional love was kind of, it wasn't absolute, it wasn't certain at all. It was just like, he had to make sure that there was an emotional connection as well there. It is water, so it's a heavier element than air. So naturally, it's a little bit more water than air, even though it's in a cardinal sign here. It is strong, yes, but with the water sign there, it's kind of like holding it back a little bit. Nothing to do with the body, so I'm not going to go into that one. Libra though, that means he probably got to travel to certain places, like, let's go back to where it is at that time. Okay, so the northern regions, so I think he started the Alpine region of Austria. He definitely got to travel. So these are the dealings we had with his ability to give unconditional love. This experience he had also pertains to experiences probably had, again, with the northern part of, Rome at that time, with Austria, Portugal, of course, Lisbon specifically, the France area, Arles, I don't know where this is in France. Places where he went to, like, were outhouses, tops of mountains, where there was clean air, sandy or gravelly fields. It says here where hawking was formally practiced. Okay, so hawking, like falconry, I think that's similar to falconry. I'm not sure. Inner chambers, attics. So I don't know. Probably he had a little bit of dealings with foreigners in attics. I don't know, some sort of chambers. It's a sort of like a little bit high up, not top of mountains, but yes, mountains, but like where there's air, you're most likely going to get air. But a lot of dealings as well, because it is also Libra as well. So, what else is there? So yeah, he definitely liked to travel to places. Oh, I didn't mention this one because it's in Capricorn. He probably enjoyed a lot of time. I bet you Turkey is here. No, it's not. Oh, Macedonia. Okay, that makes sense. So Macedonia at that time. So in this case, Macedonia is in like northern Greece. Greece itself as well. Probably that area where today's Yugoslavia is, that area. Oh, and definitely like the Britannia. This is why it's okay. That makes sense. Hills and high, barren, rocky places, so definitely why he went into Turkey as well. Quarries, storehouses, sheep and cow pens, thresholds. Those are mostly what he enjoyed going to. We have the sun, moon here, all of them. The moon specifically, he felt more at home in those places, but he probably started to enjoy going to other places that were a little different. So let's look at Aquarius. Okay. Further a little bit south, probably. He didn't go to Ethiopia. Ethiopia wasn't part of the empire back then. But definitely places where there's a lot of places where machinery, he's probably open to that as well. He didn't really feel necessarily at home. He probably enjoyed it because he probably had to get materials for his, building his Hadrian Wall, and these sort of places where he's getting materials like minerals extracted, wine, probably vineyards, wells, cultivated ground, springs, conduits, surgeries, lecture rooms. Okay, I'm not sure about that one, but so yeah, so he felt at home with certain places, but then he started to kind of enjoy it a little bit more after that one, to other places where there's like technology involved, for sure. Machines. Okay. What else can we say about this one? Okay, so now we go into the 12th house is through Pisces rules the 12th house, right? But right now, what rules, or in his chart, what rules that is Sagittarius, is Jupiter. Jupiter rules his 12th house. So any sort of hidden clandestine activities, hidden affairs, sort of things that he kept hidden, isolated, or rooms for himself, was influenced a lot by right here. So his Mercury is in 6 degrees in Capricorn. So his communication was really, really hidden. It's very much affected by Piscean energy. So he has a Piscean color there. And it's conjunct to his ascendant. So even though he wanted to be, very ambitious, he knew what he wanted to get. He was kind of generous, but he was kind of strict about it. He has his own rules. He had his own perspective about it. He didn't know how to necessarily communicate that. It was kind of hidden, and it was very much not hidden. So, and Saturn is right there, so naturally it definitely hides that as well. So probably whenever he had dreams, he had to communicate those kind of to himself. I don't know what guidance he would have had. Again, I don't know the fixed stars here, but definitely like a lot of troubles with his dreams, fears of not knowing what to do, like how to communicate. Especially, let's look at Sedna here. So past cycles. So Sedna is high vibration of series, so more like unconditional love. Which this one, so forgiving disposition, okay. Clarity of perception, okay. So even though he didn't know how to communicate to others, it's probably like he had this sort of well, it is actually in conjunction. All 3 planets is a stellium. So Saturn was able to work through that in his dreams, personal, or anytime he isolated himself, anytime he had reflection, he knew how to work with that and kind of like be okay with it. It is Sedna, so it's a very like highly forgiving part of ourselves. It's like absolutely forgiving. It's like very, very discerning, very forgiving. A lot of clarity comes through. Knowing that we have free choice and free will, and Dharma oriented. I'm not sure exactly what that means. Let's go into the definition that I got. That what I chose to call it. Okay, urge to relinquish. Okay, yeah, forgive. So willingness and openness to let go of what doesn't serve you anymore, but in a very, very natural way. So responsibility, natural destiny. Okay. The destiny thing, ignore that part. But definitely able to work through his thoughts by himself, probably in isolation. Probably why he did enjoy isolated places, because it is in Capricorn right here. 29 degrees in Sagittarius, so it's kind of pulling at it. So Saturn is kind of like, first he has these fears, first he has these limitations, and kind of like he kind of holds himself back a little bit, and he kind of isolates himself as well. Even though it is in Sagittarius, he had to maybe travel. That's why he traveled a lot, most likely. But he probably also had fears about those, like not knowing who do I not contact, who do I come across, and they're just going to judge me again. Because again, his experiences with foreigners. Right here we have his sun. His sun right here is also, well, sun is also partially, it's co-ruled by Saturn, as also Uranus right here. Okay? So experiences with relationships, or kind of sort of agreement with the 7th house. We saw that earlier, right here. So his what do you call this? He didn't know how to actually express himself, so that way he kind of hid himself from others, and whenever he needed to do that. But in foreign places, he liked to travel. He definitely liked to isolate also when he was traveling, I would say, kind of do that. But eventually he started to understand himself and sort of, okay, well, this is where I need to allow myself to process. Whether he's like in his dreams, when he's resting, when he's isolated, when he's kind of like in his solitary sort of processing mode and like away from everything else, you know. So because he knew what he really wanted, but others probably didn't know what they wanted. He did. It seemed like that, and he had to really work through that. So that's his experience. Let's go through. Let's skip everything else. Orcus. Oh, Orcus is. Oh, okay. He had to know what he wanted also. Right? When he traveled, because you have Venus. Venus rules along with Eris, but Eris was hidden here, my intercepted house. Eris rules his ninth house, so his travels was all about being also convincing to others, but he had to be honest about it as well. Even though he was kind of very, charismatic and all that stuff, he needed to be able to figure that out. But he kind of doubted it as well. You have another intercepted house here in Virgo. Goodness sakes, a lot of intercession. Okay, that's interesting. So his 8th house is interception, so he has a lot of times to process that internally. This is where he had to transform himself a lot. House of transformation. He had to know what was considered, especially when he met Antinous. It was like kind of a real challenge for relationship with the public. Again, we said earlier that he's kind of highly sexual, but he didn't know how to work with that, especially at a younger age. Intercepted. His Venus came through the way that came out is through his travels. People started to see him a little bit more as like, oh, he's very alluring, he's very charismatic and all that stuff. And it came through his travels, but he had to be honest with it. He had to have integrity on his way, because he had to balance that, be able to be convincing, charismatic, and alluring, and seductive, and all that stuff, and sexual and sensual, but at the same time, is this what I really want? Specifically like working with your own specific, like what you want. Just why do you want this to be this way? Why does it have to be a certain way? Why does it have to be perfect? Why does it have to be integrity? Orcus right there is questioning his integrity regarding not only his relationship with others, but also his health, his overall health, which ties into his 8th house is closed in, so there's nothing that it's not in the sign of Virgo, so we don't look at that. We look at Leo. His sun rules his 8th house. So again, there you go. So any 8th house transformation he has right there when he met other people was definitely affected by that. So you have this didn't know how to be confident with himself, but he had to learn how to be confident with himself, but at the time to be honest with how he was relating with others. But he had to process this more like inwards. This is more of a personal thing. But he didn't really know how to express that until he probably came out and started traveling, right? Venus right here, 9th house, Venus rules his 9th house. Eris is hidden right here, so I would say didn't have a lot of effect on his life and when he traveled, but it could have. So he had to also be honest and be intense with his own approach, with how he related with people, with himself. Okay, so a lot of transformation, a lot of introspection, a lot of inner work that he had to go through. Or at least he wasn't, if he didn't go through that, then he was forced to. Right. He could have worked with this Orcus energy right here, 11th house, Haumea, to be creative and how to be really certain about his own abilities to thrust his own inner nature, his own inner guidance. And also work with that and work with that intellectually through his family, through his history, probably through his DNA. That came naturally to him. That's why he's very introverted. This really shows that he's very introverted. And with right here, It's in earth and air. It's in earth and water signs, so that makes sense. Um, yeah. So he knew how to work with this energy, working with being quick-witted and being like convincing and charismatic. That ties in. He knew how to work with that energy, especially when he met people. Finally, when he met people, the sextiles refer to when it's natural. It comes naturally, especially when there's an external force coming through, and like okay. But the trines show that he just naturally worked with that. So Haumea, Venus, Orcus, Makemake, those two aspects, those two energies, that alignments, he's able to work with things very, very creatively, intellectually, innovatively, but with a lot of integrity. He had to work with that, a lot of integrity. Otherwise, he would have been much more in trouble. And he had to learn through that. And because it's in the house of it's in the 8th house, even though it's intercepted, he eventually had to learn that, right? Especially through his shining and being like, this emperor, this like magnetic sovereign genius, because you have sun ruling his 8th house. It comes through his expression of himself, through his adventures, through his things that are always like when he took care of himself, when he was started to be more himself, despite what other people thought, despite what even he portrayed himself to be to others. Okay. North Node, 18 degrees, Sagittarius. So his South Node. I wish I joined the fixed stars here. I don't know what it is in the fixed stars. Oh. Okay. We'll probably look into that as well later, because I wanted to go into the Antinous sort of chart as well, like when he met him, like what might have happened. But we're going to go into, we went more into his personal life, but definitely which is set in Sagittarius, he had to develop a lot of this wisdom, a lot of this sort of, he had to separate himself from society and kind of figure out things on his own, and knowing what his beliefs were and figuring out what his path is, because in previous life all he did was just like talk, get information, be equal, be mindful of others, be kind of like, but this time he had to be a lot more intuitive, trusting the divine, trusting his own inner gifts, trusting what's out there, trusting, in his case probably the gods, trusting divinity, trusting his own faith, his own belief in himself, in his own guidance as well. So this is probably why he did get isolated a lot, or he isolated himself a lot, or he was at least very introverted when it came to relationship with others, the public, including his family as well, and lovers, or rather, the one lover. Contract was naturally given to him, and his Juno is in 4 degrees in Sagittarius. It was naturally kind of processed already, but he is this trine to Varuna is he knew what he had to commit to, he knew what he devoted himself to. Jupiter rules Juno here. So whatever he discovered of himself, more like what he sensed, was, what do you call this? Sorry, I'm trying to understand this one. Okay, so basically he just kind of had to go with it. Capricorn rules 10th house is a lot about reputation as well, and ego. So in order to be committed to that, he had to kind of just give in to that, because it is also in Sagittarius, it's a mutable sign, and it naturally came about where he had to just commit to that, that agreement, the marriage agreement. That's why he had other marriages, but it wasn't love at all. I mean, you can see right here is Varuna. It's all about completing tasks, about really being, but at the same time, he was in doubt of it too. He did it, but he was in doubt of it, because it was like, I don't know, this is it, but okay, I'll say yes, I'll say yes, whatever. And the moon rules his 7th house, right? So right away, it's back to his responsibilities and his duties, his dutifulness, his you know, as a citizen of the public, of the world, of a Roman emperor, what he had to fulfill. It's yeah. We already seen this square, the grand fixed square earlier. That's one of the biggest things he had to really go through in relationship with himself and the public and everybody else and his family. That was a big thing. But with Juno there, he knew how to work with that energy by, oh, okay, kind of being creative. Ah, okay. So core, he knew his way around this devotion of this marriage that he wanted to, but he had to work he had to talk his way, probably in a way out of it, so to speak, even though he agreed to certain marriages, and even any agreements at all. Right? We have here a opposition. Oh, not his core. Sorry, his son. Sorry, I keep putting that into core. So his son was his sextile to Juno. So he just knew how to be. He did go along with it, but at the same time, as long as it kind of probably worked with something, it had to be something that was conducive to something progressive in a way. It's in earlier degrees of Aquarius, so he's very much about innovation. You know, he's an Aquarian, so he pretty much that he really wanted to, but with the moon there and the Jupiter there in Capricorn, is kind of nudging it back into very Saturnian energy rather than Aquarian, or rather than Uranian. Into stronger. He has a stronger Saturnian energy to it. Yes and no, because Uranus was in Aquarius in his chart at that time, so it's both stubborn, but at the same time there's the competing energies right there, you could say. But either way, he knew how to work with that and be kind of be giving towards the responsibilities he needed to fulfill, to specifically to social circle, society itself, in order for him to fit in, I guess, not necessarily fit in, but more like to kind of fulfill a certain expectations, hopes that, you know, probably this also ties in with why he committed himself to Antinous in the first place. Once he realized his love was there, you know, then, yeah. I mean, there's no Libra point here, so we're not looking at Venus here at all. But we're going to look into the next chart when it comes to that kind of stuff, what affected what changed for him. The way he progressed through this one, you know, I'm probably going to go through the progression next time. I'll probably do a part 2, because this video is quite long. Because I wanted to do the Antinous sort of thing as well. Like when he met, we don't know when he met Antinous. Yeah, with the transits today and the progressions are for today, so that's not that important. So that's okay. So I'm not going to include that in this video, but that's okay. You know, we can always do some other things next time. But at least you kind of got to know Hadrian a little bit more. Vesta opposite Pallas Athena. Okay, so ability to communicate with the public. It's not retrograde, so he had to learn how to work with his own personal wisdom, to be like very smart and quick-witted. Yes, and it's the same because it's in Aries. It's very the burst of energy, but at the same time balance that with his ability to be to devote to the people, or at least devote to this right here. Because even though it's an opposition, Vesta was conjunct Ceres, so his devotion to the public, to the relationship with the public, and necessarily public, but more like foreigners or the empire itself, because there was a lot of foreigners already at that time. This time 76 AD, right? A lot of foreigners already, a lot of like people who were coming into the Roman Empire either as slaves, or he had this devotion towards the harmony that he would provide to foreign lands, to foreign diplomacy and all those things. Right? He had to provide that, even though again there was some confusion. There was probably like, again, we have the square here, right, to his son right here. right? Oh, it's Moon, Jupiter right here. So again, but he had to come to terms with, or balance that whole, like, his devotion to the public with the way he would communicate his wisdom and his own, like, creativity and intellect as well, his wisdom basically to, you know, Pallas Athena is this, you know what, I'm going to look more into Pallas. What did I say here? I wrote a lot of things with Pallas here. Okay, so, okay, discerning and processing, so cooperation. Okay, that makes sense. Where we gain wisdom from the fact that everything is the same and everything is connected using our inner eye. Okay. So, being able to devote, but at the same time seeing probably who he would devote himself to, or rather, what kind of, you know, what kind of agreements would he would come to, because, you know, I mean, we're talking about Libra as well, so that is a lot to do with 7th house stuff as well. Even though Libra here doesn't really, well, again, because of his 2nd house, intercepted 2nd house, the expression he had was through foreign lands, foreign diplomacy, right here. So it kind of expressed itself through, because Venus and Mars are intercepted as well. When you have an intercepted house, and you have an intercepted sign, therefore you have intercepted planets, or planets. So, but it was expressed through his relationship with the public, specifically foreign ones, or foreign relationships, diplomacy, all those things. And to devote himself and how he would express and learn from that and communicate all that. Again, the transits here are not of that time, not at any of that time. It's up to January 4th. I'll probably drop another chart for a different date or the progressions, but that's not important right now. We all progress anyways, so. Okay, now going to this chart right here. I was kind of curious about this one because it's like I kind of forced this chart. I don't know if you could see it now. Can you? Yeah, you can see it. Okay. So, I looked into the 7th house, which is like relationships, kind of, this is where I feel like, I could be wrong, but I feel like, because Sappho is same-sex relationships, but also like true friendships, like our devotion, our connectedness to people unconditionally, even to friends, to the point where it kind of feels like same-sex relationships. That's Sappho, right? Let's go into this one. I had to add in all these, genuine connections. I had to add all these asteroids because I wanted to make sure it was all about love. It is conjunct Cupid, so Cupido is childlike playfulness, childlike, you know, so I believe this is probably when he met. I'm not sure. Is this July? No, 6. July, did I say July? Yeah, July 3, 2023 AD. Probably, we don't know. I was curious about drawing up a chart, like an orrery chart, but I feel like that's going to push it because I'm still new to orrery. It's just going to be like, will I meet my lover? That's the kind of question you might ask, or, you know, in an orrery question, right? So it's called, the querent. In this case, I would be the querent myself, but then, you know, so it's kind of weird, like, who, Hadrian is not alive, so at least this form as Hadrian is not alive, so what would he ask? Can we speculate on that? Can we ask, can he say, what, did he even ask questions like that? Who would I find? What would I find love? If that's the question, that's general, but that's on behalf of him, so I would probably look into my chart, or like the querent, I would be, let's say, the querent, and I would look into other houses, and then I would probably what you call turning the chart. That's what I learned recently. You're turning the chart, or house within houses. So I don't know. I'm still new to that, so I didn't want to complicate it. I didn't want to complicate things or anything. But we have here Sappho, Cupid, transiting his 7th house. So it's probably that, but it was in 19 degrees, around 19-20 degrees Cancer, which actually trines Valentine. So this is like your true love. This is your love language. Valentine, right? It's love language, it's romantic preferences. It's where we communicate through the heart. We use language to express the heart. So I don't know, it feels like even though we have an intercepted here, what do you call this? Intercepted, sorry, planets right here, so my eyes. We have this in conjunct to those as well. We have 11 degrees, Valentine 11 degrees. The moon was also there, but the moon was in about 25 degrees, so it would at least it would be conjunct to Mars. So a lot of emotional passion as well. That kind of makes sense, right? And moon is 25 degrees, whereas Cupid is okay. So there might have been some sort of passionate attraction between the two of them, and this is when Antinous was probably when he visited. And I dated this on 123, the year that apparently, according to history, which again we don't know the exact date, I just went half of the year. I just kind of meant mid-year. I thought, okay, maybe he went to Turkey at that time. Today's Turkey or today's Bolu. Well, no, Bolu was where, yeah, Bolu is where Antinous was born, or today's Bolu. But that time it was like Bithynies something, I forgot what the place was. I don't know. So I went halfway through the year. So I don't know, at least halfway through the year, Gregorian calendar wise. So, yeah, so that might have been the case. Because it's in Cancer and we have this transiting moon right here, that makes sense. The moon was in Pisces, so it's very much open to that idealistic sort of connection, idealistic attraction, and magnetism and drawing to. So it's right here. It's really, but his moon was also, even though it was in Capricorn, he probably had this sort of let's take a look. It's in trine actually. It's a sextile aspect. So he could have, where he was probably able to have the opportunity to use that and be more kind of probably serious when it came to approach Antinous, but at the same time kind of still loving and open. So you have that hard sort of like militant sort of self. Probably he came out like sort of military, but at the same time very like, you can say authoritative sort of, and maybe Antinous was drawn to that. I'm not really sure. This is his chart. This is not a synastry chart. We don't know. I did draw up Antinous' chart, kind of not really sure that was his chart. We don't know exactly what date he was born. We know what year. I think we know what month. I'm not sure, but not the day. So that's kind of tricky. But it is a sextile right here. His moon is sextile to his moon right there. His natal moon is sextile to his transiting moon. Okay. If anybody else sees something that I don't, feel free. So Eros is the attraction, the ultimate, like what we're truly attracted to. It is seductive as well. It's let's go back here. Okay, so erotic love and desire, yearning for intimacy. So ultimate sexual bond. Okay, where we have it in 29 degrees Sagittarius. Okay, you could say it's square to it's Eros. Transiting Eros is square to transiting Moon. Was it in retrograde? Oh, okay. So he had probably questions about sexual bonds in this case. He probably didn't know how to connect with this guy that is just like, oh my goodness, he's so good looking, and probably vice versa as well. But to him, maybe this is his chart, so he's probably like didn't know how to bond sexually or didn't know how to work with that. At least he was probably dreaming about it, which is like, oh, okay. It is conjunct to his Alcesti. I put in here his, so 29 degrees Sagittarius, perfect conjunction to his natal Saturn. Again, there's a bit of fear there, so he probably had to, he was dreaming about it. I took out, I don't know if you noticed this, but I took out the other asteroids here. Actually, right here is also, Oh, Sedna. So his ability to work with that energy is like he had to isolate himself. He's like, why am I attracted to this person? Like, is this, kind of, so he had to kind of question it and probably go through the process of like, oh my goodness, I'm attracted to this person. I don't know. Anyways, you also noticed that I added own, his own natal asteroid. So Sappho is in his 23rd degrees. It's in the intercepted house right here. It's actually it's in conjunction to Pholus. You can see right here, and therefore conjunct Eris. So he probably was socially excluded. He had to make choices about it with his own sexuality, right? I'm pretty sure that's what it was. People sometimes like, or he couldn't be open with it until because we have what did I say about until he probably learned to process it himself. He knew how to be more expressive about it because Pluto rules this house right here, right? But also Mars rules that, but Mars was an intercepted house. So we're talking about foreign relationships with himself. Like we're talking about his 9th house and his 1st house. 9th, 1st, those are when he started to bloom and started to literally come out and really understand who he was himself. Eros, his natal Eros was also is 23 degrees, conjunct transiting Ceres, but retrograde. Part of fortune right here. So in order to really, when he finally knew how to express himself in his ambitions and the way he portrayed himself to the world, that's when he started to come to fruition with his gifts. That's part of fortune. It's conjunct his ascendant. But with the arrows there, transiting Ceres retrograde, probably felt that he didn't know how to express himself sexually, at least at this time. He didn't know how to be kind of like forgiving of himself and really unconditionally accepting of his own desires, his own wishes, and his own need for intimacy, because he's always been serious. So with Psyche there, let's go to Psyche. Actually, let's go to transiting Jupiter. I might not do Alcesti, but Alcesti has something to do with something else. Is it requited love? Is undoubted love? Loyalty. Okay, let's just go with that term, loyalty. Okay, so but let's go for now. The transiting Jupiter retrograde. Is this transit today? Oh no, sorry, that's transiting at 123 AD. So his retrograde Jupiter probably had to hold back a little bit when it comes to his own ambitions and his loyalty to himself, loyalty to he was questioning his own, probably at this time he's questioning his own where does he belong, right? At this time he's probably getting much older. He's probably in his 30s or something, I don't know. Was he? He was born 120... When was he? What year? 76? So he's probably in his 30s. Oh, he's already in his 50s right here. So he didn't know. He was kind of questioning this. This is when he's 50s. He probably has one of his returns already. Jupiter returns. Lots of that, of course. He has had his first Saturn return. But another time we'll do a return chart for Hadrian. Maybe, I don't know, we'll see. So there's that loyalty to himself, so questioning his own loyalty to his own needs, to his own specific wants and needs and his own desires, especially with Psyche here. We didn't talk about this. So Psyche is conjunct his sun. Psyche in Aquarius is like soulful connection in a very unique and different way. In this case, his people might say homosexual tendencies. I don't care. The fact that he's had these things is like his bisexuality as well. He could be bisexual. It doesn't matter. The point is he was trying to question that. He was questioning that because let's see what the transit is aspect to. So that's 27, or sorry, 29 degrees Jupiter. Okay, conjunct Alcesti, which was already in 3 degrees or 2 degrees Aquarius. So that's right there is conjunct. So a lot of doubting of his own ambitions and loyalty to himself, but he had to, if he followed what he was feeling, he could have been able to process that intentionally, especially because it is in Pisces, and Pisces is a natural ruler of the 12th house, so he had to probably isolate himself quite often, especially at this time, especially when you're older. But 29 degrees, let's see if there's anything 29 degrees, 29. Okay, so he had to think a lot about that. So he probably... okay. Mercury there got him to process that thinking, and in terms of what marriage would mean to him, what marriage would, right here, what is love in this case, what his contracts were, not just agreements with the public and all that formal stuff, but also love itself. And Psyche conjuncting Mercury there is kind of making him think about what is a meaningful soulful connection, because he now sees this like beautiful person. He's always connecting with this person that year, and he doesn't know what to do with it yet, unless he's like, okay, well, Psyche is telling him, Mercury going, well, I don't know, you need to be real about that, right? So again, this is now in the sun. This is ruled by the sun. I would say, I don't know if transits are affected by the natal sun, like whatever sign it's in. If it's, I think so. So he still had to be honest with his own. He had to have integrity in terms of what he really, really wanted. Isis there is in, what is that? 8 degrees Isis. Okay. Opposing his 7 degree natal Psyche. Okay, this was a sign that he had to follow. It's like he had to listen to that message that it's like, okay, so, Isis is saying, this is your true love coming through. That makes sense, okay? And reminding it's like, okay, you need to probably spend more time with this one and say, your true love is coming through, and here he is, right? And this is why they got along. And Psyche is like his soulful connection with that. Oh, so sweet. I love that. With Saturn and Jupiter, or Saturn and Neptune there. Saturn and Neptune transiting is like this reminder of like what decisions you make, the karmic choices you need to make, and seeing what truth you need to come across when it comes to marriage and marriage and contracts, any sort of relationship, really, even open enemies, but particularly with this one is also realizing it's like, okay, and it's sort of opening up soulful, like destined connections. Typically vertex here. We didn't do that in the previous chart. This vertex is, that's awesome. Antinous was meant to be there. Antinous was hidden here. Conjunct to Pluto means that he naturally had this, he knew how to work with this intense energy of like realizing it's fated. You can just say, you could call it fated, but really it's like fated as in like the signs were there. He was meant to come to Bolo. He was meant to be in that area, right? And I know it sounds like I'm biased about this one, which I'm not supposed to, but right here when I say it's hidden, I mean like when he's, we're talking about his his moment to himself, like this natural tendency for him to kind of isolate and to kind of process the emotions himself or whatever he's going through, because of his difference, his uniqueness, and where he does strange, he does strange things when it comes to money making, but at the same time, it still kind of ties into his self-worth. Like he does strange things to prove his self-worth, or in this case, he's learning to prove his self-worth to himself, right? With Pluto, it's trying to tear away that sort of Uranian energy of like, do you just need to be that different, or can you just be different for the sake of you, and for the sake of your journey, the path that you're in? And so Pluto right here is breaking that and showing that it's like, oh, okay, well, Antinous is trying to embrace Antinous represents your own inner happiness, your own childlikeness of being yourself. It's kind of like Cupido. It's kind of like one of the asteroids, but Antinous, it represents that inner childness of like just being flamboyant, and this is why it's a gay deity, it's a gay god, whatever you want to call it, right? So it's right there, it's showing that's like you are unique. This is not a coincidence that Antinous is like in between Pluto and Uranus right there when it comes to self-worth and also yourself as well. It's definitely more about self-worth, so it's you're valuing yourself, your own personal freedom. It could be just also necessarily actual possession, but like people possession, so to speak, like the thing that you've earned, and thing that you've gotten from this life, this earthly life, the second house stuff, right? So, especially because it's not, again, it was an intercepted house, so he's learning to come out of his shell, and Pluto shows here that when he finally, first of all, came to terms with himself, which is a realization of Pluto. Pluto really bring out the genuine in us, but your own uniqueness, which is Pluto conjunct that, but your own uniqueness in a childlike, sort of flamboyant, sort of your own gayness, right? And Vertex, right here, it's like faded. It's like telling you, okay, well, there's something here. And Vertex was in conjunct to an intercepted house of the 8th house. Once he began to really a lifetime processing of isolation or like things for himself and really like flaying away the egoic things, 8th house stuff started to bloom through the sun right here when he started to accept that right here, right? And Vertex started to go, okay, this is now destined. You're being shown opportunities. There might have been other people too, but then when he probably finally accepted it, that's when his gifts started coming out, and then because we do have Jupiter, right? Jupiter is conjunct to his sun, and Jupiter rules Sagittarius right here. We're talking about his north node as well. So he's definitely meant to have this. So his Vertex was showing this, like there's something else out here. And then that's when he met Antinous. I'm not going to go into this one. I don't know what that means yet right now, because I'm more concerned about the length of the video, to be honest with you. Penelope is a loyalty. Penelope is, what is Penelope? Loyalty, commitment, devotion, but too much probably. Penelope is like, here we go. Penelope, is it devotion or is it Penelope? Hold on, let me go back here. I thought I had Penelope. Oh, I probably didn't. Yes, lighter commitment, devotion. So, to his health, as he was growing older. Okay, we have the Penelope conjunct his sun, Mars conjunct here. So, again, you probably had to, regarding his health, this one is more like regarding his health. So it's something to do with the fact that when he was just getting older, just being reminded that it's like, okay, it's time to, you're getting older, you're 50 something, so be mindful of your own health. So you probably had to, I don't know, contact other like his own physicians back then. His health pertaining the breast area, so that's cancer, it's like breast area. Lymphatic system, female reproductive organs, but similar, breast, okay, so this area right here, but also pertaining to, oh, because it's Penelope, okay, so he needs to find ways to be more attentive to his own health, his own vitality, which is of course the back. Probably he had back problems, I'm not sure. He probably also had like inflammations in certain parts of his body, particularly this area of the body, maybe his heart, something to do with his heart, something to do with his back as well. But also sometimes possibly also his lower regions, because you know, I don't know, something he would eat, I don't know. Gemini rules that, so we go into Mercury. So anything, probably, okay, so I'm not saying that he did go into alcohol, but let's take a look at this one. Vices of Capricorn. What are the vices of Capricorn? What are you hiding? Or is that Mercury? I'll have to look into Mercury. Oh, gluttony. Oh, okay, that makes sense. Ah, okay, probably started to eat a lot. Okay, probably too much of not healthy foods like beans, mushrooms, pomegranates, carrots, celery, hazelnuts. Any sort of traumatic experiences that he had to hide from, like Mercury rules his 6th house right now, but it's in his 12th house, but his Mercury was ruled by Saturn, and Saturn is right there in the 12th house as well. So anything to do with his lower regions, because it's Mars, Venus, but at the same time that's kind of gluttony sort of thing, so it's probably overeating, because he was depressed, probably depressed. Because the way he was thinking, he couldn't express himself. A lot of probably depression, he probably went through that. And so that affected his overall health, specifically his vitality. He didn't have a lot of energy. And it also affected his sexuality, because I guess he's probably suppressing all that stuff. He wasn't even, yeah. So that actually shows that he needs to work on that as well. So now it's coming through fruition. When he met Antinous, he's kind of there's a story in the history that he started to shine. I think this is why he built the Hadrian Wall or something like that. He started becoming more really himself, like benevolent and really generous and all those things. He started to come out and really be, you know, because of Antinous. Antinous kind of showed him the way. And this whole intercepted thing about Venus, Mars here started to come out. His own sexuality started to become more real, instead of just like, what everybody wants, what everybody needed, whatever this, blah, 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 blah. Right? Especially because Mars rules also the 10th house right here. Right? So his own sexuality was questioned. He didn't know what to do with that. And so when he finally came out, he's able to like, okay. People knew about it, and probably he didn't give a fuck about it. Juno was also right there, reminding him to be more committed and devoted to his own, you know, his own journeys with foreigners, or his own philosophy, because it ties into that's the 9th house. It ties into Sagittarius right here. Makes sense, right? So he needs to focus on. Juno was telling him, like, this is a time to be more of yourself, to understand what you really believe in, what your personal beliefs are, what you're going for, so even though he had this relationship with Antinous, he still had to kind of process it, not by himself, more like just still away from societal expectations and like whatever. Right. Uranus was also in about 18 degrees Virgo in his intercepted house. So this is shining a light on his transformation and being more open to that. And it's actually opposite of his right here. So it's showing that it's like you need to embrace your sexuality, your difference, and your being different sexually speaking, right? Uranus is like opposite of that. It's like you need to embrace that, you need to balance that. It's okay to be different, and it's okay to embrace your sexuality. Okay. Penelope was there in his intercepted house, and I believe, I think I remember. Orcus, okay, 11 degrees Orcus, okay, Penelope is conjunct. So you need to be honest with what he was committed to in order for him to transform. And finally Uranus was just like, here's Uranus going, oh, okay, here you go, here's a change you're looking for. Okay, so that kind of puts everything into completion. Oh, his north node, social north node was there in the 5th house. It's conjunct the cusp of the 5th house in 1 degree Gemini. Okay, so everybody else was 1 degree Gemini. Is it opposite? Square. It was square. What people were expecting from him, like to communicate, be more like, be kind of like maybe like a teacher probably, especially like, or in this case, the lover, to be more like a teacher was kind of, he had this challenge of whether to be honest with that. But Orcus is right there inside going like, hey, be honest with her. Is this what you really want? Probably like this societal transit right here is saying that's like, well, maybe society wants you to be a teacher, but maybe he doesn't need to be a teacher anymore. Maybe he doesn't need to be that older person, like the daddy, but he just needs to be the person, just to be there. And this is probably what triggered the whole thing for him to come out. And Uranus is right there, so going, okay, you need to activate this 8th house, and you need to transform and be real with yourself. So Orcus starts to go like, okay, now he knows what he wants. Now he can be committed to really what he wants. I think that's it. Anyways, okay. I think that's the end of that. I hope you guys enjoyed that one. There's a lot of things to go through there. There's a lot more. Well, sort of. But that's just a bit. That's just the gist of it. I might do this again. I might not. I don't know. There is a lot to go through. I wanted to kind of figure out what fixed stars were in his chart as well. But this is some interest of mine that I thought would be interesting because it's something that hit me. So in any case, I have to go. But in any case, this was fun. I hope you guys enjoyed it, like I said earlier. If you have any questions, you know what to do. But anyways, I'll see you guys later. Thank you for watching.